Once more, could I ask those of you who've been in touch with the mothership over the interval, please to switch off your mobile phones for the last session of the forum. The other thing is that as many as we can manage of the presentations and slides that you've enjoyed over the last 24 hours or so are going to be made available to you online somewhere next week. They'll be updating the website, the address for which is on the front of your conference folders, the rewiringscotland.com website. So keep an eye on that. A lot of the statistical information and stuff that's been flying past you yesterday and today will be available there for you to download next week. Now, this last plenary session of the 2010 SCDI Forum has been given the title Sparking a Nation. And what it's unashamedly about is inspiration. All the preparation, all the planning, all the prudent housekeeping in the world can only take you so far. It's that extra surge of adrenaline that we're going to try to locate in the hour or so that remains to us. This is going to be about personal stuff. It's going to be about attitudes and energies and ambitions and commitment and the universal lessons that can be drawn from those individual things. Our first speaker's CV, I have to tell you, describes the sort of career ascent that makes your ears pop. Born in Glasgow, he started an IT consultancy in 1997. Within 4 years, he'd opened a European version, followed 3 years later by his own insurance corporation, then his own bank, serving European commodity traders, which grew swiftly into a diverse international financial group. Now he's changing tack again to become, amongst other things, many other things, a strategic advisor to government. Would you please welcome Azeem Ibrahim?
Thank you for that kind introduction. First of all, I'd like to thank SCDI for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak before such an esteemed audience as we have here today. It is indeed a great honour and a privilege for me to stand here before today. One of the questions I'm often asked is that how did I start off in business, or how did I get to where I was today? And I think sometimes when I give the answer to that question, people are a little bit disappointed because they're expecting something a little bit different. Because the truth is actually quite simple, really. When I was a teenager, I worked in my father's newsagents every day after school. And I would spend the entire day just reading every single newspaper from cover to cover, because there wasn't really much else to do. And I obtained a real passion for the financial markets and trying to understand how the world worked. So when John Major's government was privatising the utilities, the rail tracks and the British Energies and so on, I realised that there's an opportunity here. You know, every member of the public had an opportunity to buy some shares on those utilities at a discounted rate. So what I did is that I bought shares on every single member of my family, and I turned a healthy profit. It was a couple of £1,000, but for a 17-year-old, that was quite a considerable amount of money. Also, at the same time, if you remember, building societies were converting into banks. And if you had an account at a building society, you would get a small windfall when it converted into a bank. So I opened accounts in all the building societies, and I made a little profit out of that as well. And it was a very valuable lesson for me, even though I was a teenager, is that there are opportunities everywhere. And the reason I mention that today is to make a simple point, is that entrepreneurship is not about what you've got. It's not about who you know or what you've studied. It is simply about opening your eyes to the opportunities that are around you. It could be based on specialist know-how that others do not have. It could be based on a geographical region that is crying out for a new product or a new service. Or it could be based on a community or a demographic. The key is the attitude to spot these opportunities when they arise. Entrepreneurship, in effect, is a mindset. Now, all of that is all very well for the aspiring entrepreneur. But let me just turn this around for a moment and look at it from the point of view of the government. How can we have a government that fosters this entrepreneurial attitude? And that's exactly what I want to talk to you about today. First of all, why is entrepreneurship important? I believe entrepreneurship is essential for a sustainable and dynamic economy. And secondly, I'll try to give some of my answers as to how I think government can encourage entrepreneurship. I would argue that a government's focus on entrepreneurship is just as important, if not more so, as its focus on productivity and GDP. Now, why is that the case? Because entrepreneurship not only drives growth, but it also drives productivity. There are a number of ways in which an economy can become more productive. Implementing better management practices, implementing more efficient technology, consolidating, and so on. But what percentage of production actually comes from entrepreneurial activity in the United Kingdom at large? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? It's actually a full 50% of all productivity comes from entrepreneurial activity. And that is because when older businesses are replaced by newer ones, the aggregate production goes up considerably. Now, that is true for regions throughout the UK, and if we make an analysis of these regions' individual regions, you will see that the regions with the highest productivity are also the regions with the most entrepreneurial activity. Entrepreneurism also creates jobs. Between 1999 and 2002, entrepreneurial activity created 25% of all the jobs in Scotland. Now, there's a second reason why we have to take entrepreneurism more seriously. The more entrepreneurial a population in general, the better it will adapt to economic shocks like we have just come out of now, because they are able to adapt to that change because of the skills that it fosters. In order for you to become a good employee, you will have to adapt and do whatever role that your employer gives you, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in order for you to become a good entrepreneur, you continuously have to be more proactive. If an employee and an entrepreneur quit their jobs on the same day, the entrepreneur is ready with the right attitude to seek the next opportunity with immediacy. On aggregate, this proactivity leads to a more resilient economy. Of course, some of you will argue that the focus of government for a country like Scotland should be on inward investment. After all, inward investment is what contributes towards employment, productivity, and growth. But to rely solely on inward investment leaves an economy vulnerable, as we are all seen back in 2001 with Silicon Glen being left a shadow of its former self when all that investment was pulled out. Sustainable growth requires resilience. The third reason, thirdly, over-dependence on anything, on a single aspect of the economy, is just simply bad strategy. We have to be the masters of our own destiny. We have to captain our own ship, and entrepreneurism engenders that. Now, if I have convinced you that entrepreneurism is a key component of the Scottish economy, then the question is, how can government and society encourage that? The first thing we have to do is that we have to look at countries that concentrate on entrepreneurism and try to figure out what do they have in common. And a pattern emerges when we do that. And in the words of the technology guru, Paul Graham, who said, "I think you only need two kinds of people to create a technological startup. You need rich people and you need nerds." Because these are the only people that are present when startups get started. Everybody else will move on. Now, this is very true. This is a potent mix of new ideas and investors. Now, Scotland is very well placed for both of these. We have some of the highest ranking universities in Europe: Edinburgh, Glasgow, St Andrews, Strathclyde, to name but a few. We have a financial industry, despite the recent turmoil, still turns over £7 billion a year and employs over 90,000 people. But what we have not done is to combine those two. The finance is there, but we have a problem with perception. In the Global Entrepreneur Monitor of 2007, they highlighted the biggest problem they have in Scotland is the problem of perception. There are simply not enough people applying to this finance for two reasons. First of all, they don't know how to do it. They don't know the mechanics of the process. And secondly, they don't believe that even if they did, they would be successful in attracting finance. We also need to have the right culture to foster entrepreneurship. Most people will choose a job based on security and safety of that job. They're unlikely to choose something that may or may not be successful and may result in failure. And to take such a step requires a great act of bravery. In many ways, it's a counter-cultural defiance. And in this respect, the responsibility comes upon the media. The media can use its agenda-setting powers to report more on entrepreneurship, more of the success stories that we have, and over time this can foster a culture of risk-taking and entrepreneurship. We will not see the changes in the headline economic figures with immediacy, but we will notice a change in the day-to-day interaction that we have with people. When a mother tells her friend that her son is spending an increasing amount of time in the garage working on a new product that he wants to take to market, will her friend scoff or will she encourage? When a bank clerk quits his job because he now wants to work on a full-time on an iPhone application that he's thought of, will his friends think he's crazy or will they buy him a round of drinks? This is something that most economists will overlook, is a societal effect on the decision-making process. And in many ways, that is what this conference is about today. It's about making sure that society gets the right message to the next generation. In 10 years' time, do we want a society that says to the young that do not get any ideas above your station and do your job? Or do we want a society that says, yes, we can? Now, Scotland has to take an inward look at itself. We have to look at our universities, the high quality of our universities. We have to look at the quality of the percentage of our graduates. We have to look at our finance industry. And I'm confident that all the elements of a high entrepreneurial society are there. We just need to figure out a way of making them all work together. Thanks for listening.